Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Mr. Brinker, welcome to Brussels.
Thank you.
Sorry about the weather. It's unusual even for us this time of year. But welcome. You're going to speak to a large crowd this evening. But you're mainly here to talk about Enlightenment Now, which has come out about a year ago, or even a little more, and which has done very well. Bill Gates calls it his favorite book of all time. The main argument of the book is that actually the world is not doing as bad as we may think it is, but we just have to want to see it, and to see it we have to follow the data. Is that right?
That's right. That progress is a real phenomenon. It's not a matter of being an optimist or seeing the glass as half full. It is visible in the data. Data of a kind that you can't appreciate from the news, from journalism, because news is about things that happen, usually things that go wrong. The things that go right are not news. A country that's at peace, a city that has not been attacked by terrorists, a country that can feed its people, those are below the radar of journalism, and people forget about them. And so the center part of the book is a set of graphs plotting measures of human well-being, life expectancy, infant mortality, number of leisure hours, amount of time spent on housework, how much you have to pay for the necessities of life, how much you have to pay for a light bulb, all showing improvement over decades and centuries that most people are just not aware of. But then, since I don't believe that progress is just a force of the universe, I don't think that progress just happens. I ask the question, what makes progress possible? Now, there are many, many answers, but at the core, I suggest, are the values that we associate with the Enlightenment. Reason, science, and humanism. Humanism being making human well-being a priority, as opposed to national glory or religious law, but the health and happiness of men, women, and children.
Why is it so important at this time to defend these values, as they read in the subtitle of the book, and you've mentioned them already, reason, science, humanism?
One reason is simply that people are unaware of or forget how bad things used to be. So they look at the problems that we now face and think that we have never been in a worse crisis. And that can lead to problems like radicalism. People want to just tear down all our institutions, figuring nothing could be worse than what we have now. So it's important to realize it could be a lot worse. It used to be a lot worse. In many parts of the world, it's worse than it is in say, Europe or the United States. I also wanted there to be to show that there's a coherent set of ideas, a coherent philosophy or worldview that is not populism, it is not Marxism, it's not religion, it's not nationalism. Many people, if they're not Marxists, they're not religious, they're not nationalists, they're not fascists, they're not populists, what are they? No one knows kind of what you believe in if you're not one of those extreme ideologies. And I suggest there really is a coherent philosophy. It could go by different names. You could call it secular humanism, liberal cosmopolitanism, but I thought Enlightenment ideals was the name that I chose, and I tried to argue that it really is a coherent way of valuing things in the world, namely applying knowledge and reason and science to improve human flourishing.
Yet, as you have found, it's rather tough to convince people of the fact that we're all collectively getting better. There are quite a few people that don't believe the data, even as it is presented like black on white. You've mentioned the media already, probably has many flaws, but you're a psychologist. Are there any psychological reasons why we are wired to opt for negativity or to?
There are two big ones. One of them is the way that the human mind judges risk and probability. And that's by a mental heuristic called availability, that availability from memory, from imagination. The more easily you can imagine a narrative, an anecdote, an image, the more probable, you think it is. So if you read about a terrorist attack, you think that we're all in danger from terrorism, even though terrorists kill fewer people every year than wasps and bees, or drowning in bathtubs. The other feature of human psychology that makes it hard to appreciate progress is the negativity bias. That in general, bad emotions crowd out good emotions. We dread losses more than we enjoy gains. There are more negative words in languages than positive words. We worry more about what can go wrong than we appreciate what's gone right. Now, in general, this is, in some ways, an adaptive approach, because there are many things that can go wrong, and the things that can go wrong can harm you more than the things that go right can help you. But it means that when a society gradually makes progress, it can often be invisible, and we forget about it. We don't think that a few decades ago there were wars waging in Vietnam and Afghanistan and Algeria. We forget that there were people had to line up to get gasoline, that there was double-digit inflation and double-digit unemployment. All of these things, they were in the news at the time, but they're not in the news now, and so we think that now we have a unique, unprecedented crisis.
Maybe finally, there's also been some criticism. One argument that people make is that your book, your thesis, would allow people to kind of sit back, relax, and not bother about all the things that still obviously are bad in this world.
Well, I argue the opposite, that it's just by knowing that it is possible to make things better, to solve problems. It's not romantic, it's not utopian, you don't have to be a dreamer. It's a practical possibility. We've solved problems in the past. That means that the problems that we have today, which are very real, but we ought to take the same mindset, that if we gather knowledge, if we advance in science, and if we have as our goal to make people better off, then we can succeed. I mean, not 100% ever, but we can make progress.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.